Disruptive leadership. What is disruptive leadership? Why is it important? And is it needed in 2022 coming into 2023? Let's talk about it.
Hey, greetings, leaders. Listen, have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's really everything you need in a podcast in one place. So, do me a favor, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.
Greetings, leaders, and welcome to another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, Season 3, Episode 27, Disruptive Leadership. Why is this so important? Many changes are taking place in the world today at the speed of change, rapidly, increasingly changing. And many leaders, of course, unfortunately, if you look back over the past 2 years of what we have gone through with this pandemic and the changes that it has not only produced, but the infrastructures of our organizations that it exposed, right? Lets us know that there was a lot of work that needed to be done even before now. Let's say, for instance, as what they call the Great Resignation, which I really call the Great Opportunity. But guess what, though? These shortages in workers, this thing was starting to happen back in 2009, right? When the decrease of workers actually started. And this was pre-pandemic. This was way before the pandemic happened in 2019 and 2020, So the decline in workers was starting to happen in 2009. And unfortunately, the way that predictions are looking and research shows that the shortage of workers is to continue even throughout 2030. So this monthly quit rate, is going to continue. And it's been happening for quite a while now. Even with such terminology as quiet quitting, right? And quiet firing. I remember listening to something from Les Brown back in the 90s when he talked about how people are going to work doing just enough work to not get fired, and the organizations are paying people just enough for them not to quit. This is back in the 90s this is being said, and that's the perfect description of quiet quitting and quiet firing. So these terms of quiet firing and quiet quitting are not new terms, or it's not a new practice, in other words. It's been happening for quite a while. I must admit today that I am a little under the weather, but however, I gotta stay consistent with those that are listening to this podcast and learning from this podcast. So now, as we're talking about disruptive leadership, we gotta go back to the 4 trends, right? There are 4 great trends that are taking place in 2022 and beyond. Number 1 is, and they're disruptive trends. It is. So this is why disruptive leadership is so important. Number 1 is there's growth mindset. Growth mindset. Number 2, there's emotional intelligence. Number 3, there is flexibility. And number 4, there's diverse inclusion, right? So these are 4 trends that are taking place within 20. They started really in 2020 and are going, way beyond the 2030. These are four great trends that are taking place with this growth mindset and emotional intelligence, which is empathy, right? Flexibility, which deals with, the hybrid or remote workforce. And then also with that, the workforce is going to be 75% millennials, coming between 2022 and 2025. So 41% of, these workers are facing, are going into the, coming into the digital age, right? And so they're looking at how can they learn more about these digital platforms, right? How can they learn more about these digital platforms? 60% of workers are challenged, with navigating hybrid workplace dynamics. See, these are some of the things that are happening within the flexibility trend part of the four trends, right? But here's one of the things that can help with the hiring process, right, of attracting more talent is 53% of workers who are looking for work are focused on well-being. They're focused on well-being. See? So if you have within your benefits packages, well-being, well-being does not just mean, hospital insurance or possibility of or temporary disability insurance. Doesn't mean that. Well-being means that if this worker needs to take a break, they can take a break, right? So that they can regroup their thinking. If they need to take, a wellness break, they can take that break without there being threatened, a threat to their job or their work performance being questioned, right? Some people have to deal with more than others. And so if you have a well-being component baked into your flexibility, right, into your hybrid or remote workspace work model, then, you're looking out for your employees, okay? Then there's diverse inclusion. Not only being, invited to the dance and not only being asked to dance, but diverse inclusion means that the person is actually on the planning committee, right? On the planning committee to invite those, that diverse and inclusion or inclusive, body or population, okay? So, again, the four great disruptions or trends that are taking place between 2022 and 2030 is growth mindset, emotional intelligence, flexibility, and diverse inclusion. This is why disruptive leadership is so important. So, 3 characteristics of disruptive leadership is that they have the adaptive mindset, innovative mindset, and a connecting mindset. Again, they adapt, innovate, and connect. And I've noticed that in certain ways, right, there are 2 specific people that fits this description. Number 1, it's women. Women have always had to adapt to situations, innovate how they do things, and connect in order to make things happen. This is a maternal instinct of women of being able to take care of their children, being able to be great moms, whether they have biological children or not. It's just their nature to make sure that they have what they need, make do with what they have. That's a great leadership. That's a great leadership characteristic. And women that I notice have this characteristic instinctively to adapt, to innovate, and connect. I have a great deal of respect for women leaders. The second person or persons that I see that fits this description are warriors or soldiers, men and women, right? Who have had to adapt in situations, innovate, the way they do things. They have to rig up this and rig up that, and then connect to the people, right? This connection is something we're going to talk about further in another podcast of true connectivity, connecting to people, what people, how to connect. How do you know if you have connection? How do you know if you don't have connection? We're going to talk about that in a later podcast. But adapt, innovate, and connect. These are the three characteristics of disruptive leadership. And where is this seen most in your organization? It's seen in the outcomes. It's seen in your competencies or your core values or in your company policy. But most of all is seen in your company culture, in your organizational culture. This is where it's really seen, right? This is where disruptive leadership is seen. See, disruptive leadership is that which comes in and just shakes up things. Not just to shake them up, just for shaking up's sake. But the shake-up scenes means that, look, all of this residue has settled at the bottom of the bottle. You know how you have sometimes protein shake, or you have this, and if you haven't drank it, eventually what will happen is, if it was not, mechanically mixed, if you just shook it, eventually it starts to separate. And you start seeing, the liquidy stuff on the top, and then the powdery stuff on the bottom that did not completely dissolve into the liquid or merge with the liquid. Well, what disruptive leaders do is they come in and they shake it up, right? They mix it, they blend it, they shake it up, they get things going. If you're a missing leader, if you're an absent leader, if you have no executive presence as a leader, you can't be a disruptive leader, right? Or you can be a disruptive leader in a negative way, right? To where people are just taking or overtaking, your organization and your culture and being disruptive to your organization. So what is needed in this day and time, dealing with the 4 trends, is disruptive leadership. Can disruptive leadership be developed? Yes. The first disruption, right, that has to start, the first way that you develop disruptive leadership is with the mindset. It starts with the mindset. And when you're developing a mindset, you got to learn, practice, learn. That's how you develop the mindset. Learn, practice, learn. Right? Learn, practice, learn. You learn something, you practice what you learn, then you learn from what you practiced. And you continue that cycle. Keep going, keep evolving, keep growing, right? Again, your mindset, right, is developing into the disruptive characteristic of adaptation, or adapt, innovate, and connect. Because of the 4 great disruptions or trends that are taking place between 2020. See, many people can say that it's this and it's this and it's this. It all boils down to these 4. I don't care what you read, where you go, how extensive the list is. The disruptions all boil down to these 4. Growth mindset, emotional intelligence, flexibility, and diverse inclusion. Diverse inclusion. So, as a disruptive leader, you know what a disruptive leader does with his organization, with his people, with her staff? Disruptive leaders co-create a vision for the organization with her staff, with their C-suite people, with their frontline people, right? They co-create visions for the organization, with the organization, to move the organization forward. If you're going to be a disruptive leader, you have to have the three characteristics of adapt, innovate, and connect. And the first way that you can develop a disruptive leader is to develop the mindset, which is to learn, practice, learn, right? And then you can start dealing with the four great disruptions that are taking place in the world today, which is growth mindset, emotional intelligence, flexibility, diverse inclusion. See? So, again, disruptive leadership. Why it's important? Because the world is ever changing. And you have to be one that has the mindset to adapt, to innovate, and connect in an ever-changing world, in an ever-changing time. Hey, thank you so much for enjoying another episode of Leadership Is Podcast, Season 3, Episode 27, Disruptive Leadership. Listen, what I would like for you to do is if you could let us know how you have been enjoying or learning from these podcasts. If you can send us an email at thejasona@gmail.com. I will spell that out for you. THEJASONAMUHAMMAD@gmail.com. And let us know, how you feel about this podcast, how we can improve this podcast. But if you would like to have a half-hour conversation about how JM Leadership Development can assist your organization to fill or build your leadership bench or help you with leadership development, please do not hesitate to reach out via the same email, and we will respond promptly. And always remember, leadership is influence and service.